I became an adult at 36. Common wisdom will have you believe that, we all reach the age of majority at 18, but maybe I was a late bloomer. At 18, I was in London reading for my A-levels and pursuing my mother's dream of becoming Mama Daktari. She had this in her mind. She bought me a stethoscope when I was so young. She could just see herself at PCA guild meetings saying, I'm the mother of a doctor. And I wanted to please my mother. But also, when I was in high school, I came up with a harebrained idea to start a magazine. And my English teacher at the time actually thought it was a good idea, and he said he would find the funding from the school and get a few of us and walk us through the process of creating this thing. And that whole process, writing these stories, reading stories, deciding what got into the magazine and what didn't get into the magazine, figuring out, the fact-checking, design, which font to use, the paper to use, all of this, it was fascinating to me. So I had this little dream of I wanted to be in media. But now when your mom has a whole plan, how do you start to tell her, I want to be a storyteller? But the bug had bitten me. So then I was in London doing math, chemistry, biology, and physics A-levels. There was no room for creativity, even in the subjects I'd chosen. And then I met this guy. His name is Andrew. He is, I was going to say was, but he's still alive. He is very intelligent. He was studying aeronautical engineering at the time, speaks 5 languages. Well, spoke 5 languages, now he speaks 7. And this guy, he thought I was funny. He wanted to know what I thought. He wanted to know what I was feeling. So there we were, 2 kids, feeling all these things, wanting to do all these things. And I decided, because he was too much of a gentleman, I was like, I'm going to seduce this dude. So I went to my doctor and found out what contraception I needed. I had a whole game plan. And also, I needed to have a conversation with Jesus. So when I was 7, 8, 9, I was in Girls' Brigade. We were in St. Andrew's Church. And the teacher said to us, who wants to get born again? My friend Joki Washira was sitting next to me. She put her hand up. And I thought, hey, acha mimi. So I got saved. And what the teacher said is that this means you and Jesus now have a relationship, and he's your best friend, and you can tell him all kinds of things. So I spent my whole life telling Jesus all kinds of things. Cacophony, just in his maskio. Oh, God, I want to pass my exam. Oh, please don't let me get into trouble. Oh, this and this, just all kinds of stuff. But now I wanted to do this big, sinful thing, and I was being so intentional about it. And I also thought God would tell my mother. So I was like, Jesus, I'm going to go. Our friendship is kaudo over. We just need distance. It's not you, it's me. And so I left, and I went, and I did the big thing with the guy. And then, so cut to 25. I've now finished university. I've come home. I'm not a doctor. In my mother's mind, it was doctor or failure, so clearly, failure it is. And they sell mitumba clothes in Gikomba Market, and I didn't have a job, so she was like, you're going to Gikomba, you're selling mitumbas. So you refuse to become a doctor. So one day, I go to Capital FM to pick up my friend Nini Washera, and while I was there, Somoina Kimojino was the head of radio, and we had all been in Consolata Primary together. So Somoina looks at me, I think I said something funny, and she was like, you have a voice. We're doing voice tests. She walked me to the studio. She said, here's a script, do a voice test. I did a voice test, I read the script. She looked at me, she was like, do you want this? Every bone in my body was screaming, yes! So I said yes, trying to, keep calm. And she was like, let's talk on Monday, I think you're hired. You're what? This little dream I had, this little thing I was even too scared to tell anybody and to say out loud was actually happening. So I get home, I tell my mother, and she was furious, shaking, so upset. She looked at me and she was like, Shiko, all that money I spent on your education, I could have bought myself a Benz, I could have built a block of flats for my apartment, for my retirement, and this is what you do. The people who've succeeded in this industry do not even have college degrees. She was so disappointed. But my dad, when my mom walked away, looked at me and said, you know what? Congratulations. Jobs are hard to find. You got one you like. Sounds like the money will be good. Go right ahead. So I had my dad's blessing, and I went right ahead. So I succeeded in radio, eventually was working in TV, and always I wanted to hear something from African women, and I just felt like we didn't have so many spaces. So I thought, let me create a women's newspaper. So I launched Valentine's Weekly. It was the first of its kind women's newspaper, as far as I know, in all of Africa. And our tagline was women's business. Economic empowerment, to me, is the bedrock of women's empowerment. So we were looking at women and business and money. It was so exciting. And then I was practicing yoga. So I was looking kaudo, fly in all the right places. And I lived in a 3-bedroom house in Westlands. I even had a garden in the middle of Westlands. Life looked good. Then somebody had mentioned Vipassana, which is, I'll tell you more about that later. Someone had mentioned Vipassana. I wanted to go, but it's a 10-day retreat. And I'd also met this guy. And I thought, now if I go for 10 days, these guys, someone will just ponyoka with this boy child. So I decided to shelf Vipassana and see where this relationship went. 3 months later, I realized he's a liar. He was actually married with 2 children. Anyway, whatever. So now, there was just something in my life. Things were just not adding up correctly. My business, I was in debt. I didn't want to face up to exactly how much debt I was in. I kept chasing, that next client, that next check, that next thing that would launch us into success, and it just wasn't happening. I don't know if you've ever been in debt. There's a reason people who are in debt change their numbers all the time. The phone never stops ringing. It is so stressful. So then I thought, hey, Vipassana is happening again. It only happens twice a year in Kenya. So I thought 10 days, no phone, no debtors, nobody is calling me, and then it's free and they'll feed me. Whew, I'm going for Vipassana. So I went for Vipassana. So you hand in your SIM card, you hand in your phone, you hand in any communication method, iPads, blah, blah, no Wi-Fi, nothing. And then they ask for your journals and all pens. I'm a writer. That's when I started to panic. I was like, what do you mean? I can't even sit with my own thoughts in silence. What is the problem? So they said, no, you have to hand in everything. So I handed in everything, got to my room, laid my bed, and thought, okay, we're going to wash this hair on night number 1. I thought the meditation was like a heavy suggestion. Like when you go for a yoga retreat and they tell you there are 4 yoga classes, but you can do 2. And then it's okay, you're still succeeding. But no, apparently, as I was in the shower, this woman comes and bangs on my door, and she's like, get out, you have to meditate. So that first night, 2 hours of meditation, you sit in silence, and then they tell you what this is all about. So you take 4 vows on the first night: celibacy, silence, no intoxicants, and I will not kill, which in a nutshell means you can't kill mosquitoes, but also all the food is vegetarian. So went to bed. I was like, I can do this. Day 1 happened. I can do this. Day 2 happened. I can do this. Oh, I should tell you a bit about the timetable. This is the timetable. You wake up at 4:30 in the morning. You meditate for 2 hours. And then at 6:30, you have breakfast. Then you go back to meditating again until 11:30, which is your last and final meal of the day. Then you meditate till 5. You can have black tea at 5. And then you meditate again in the evening and maybe watch a video which helps you finesse your technique. Meditation does not mean sitting on a chair. It means sitting on the floor on a little cushion with your legs crossed or maybe stretched, but you can't touch anybody. It means sitting there and closing your eyes. So this is it. Between your ears, behind your eyes, that is all that is happening for 10 days. Silence. You look at everything. I looked at everything I had ever done in my life, all the decisions I had made that I was proud of, all the decisions I was like, why did I do this? All the mistakes I'd made, every person I'd let treat me badly, every person I had treated badly where I was for real, the reason for them to go to therapy. I saw everything about me, all the ugliness, And this is the thing with meditation. In real life, when you start to think about the things that bother you, like, oh, I don't have a retirement plan, or I'm in debt, or I don't like how I look, whatever it is, you can always find something to distract you. There's always a WhatsApp group to respond to, Instagram to scroll through, somebody to call, a lunch meeting to run to. But with Vipassana, there's nothing. It's just you. So you learn, you have to ride the wave of every single feeling, all the anger, all the grief, all the joy. And it's so funny, around the time when you have the black tea, you're allowed to walk around the compound just a little bit. It's probably the size of this stage. And you see other people crying. You want to hug them, you can't touch them. Furious, you can't do anything about it. Laughing, it's like, yo, what? By yourself. So you go through all these feelings, and eventually by like day 7, I'd seen all my ugliness, all that I like about myself, and I had reached a point of acceptance. Like, just this is who I am. This is what is. This is how I am. This is my height, my size, how I think, how I feel, good, bad, whatever. This is what is. And then now I started to look at my life and where I was. And I realized that as much as my business had brought me the biggest and the juiciest checks, my bills were bigger and juicier. And I was in debt, over 2 million shillings in debt. And I had no idea how I was going to get out of it. I had no idea how I was going to pay all this off. I also realized that I really, really wanted to be a mother. I wanted a family, and if I got to 63 and I had not raised a human, I was going to be miserable. And I realized I also wanted to be in service to African women, being seen and being heard. And most of all, I realized I missed Jesus. Like, I dumped him, and here I was, and I missed Jesus. I missed our relationship. I missed the constant conversation. I had thought I needed to be perfect in order to have a relationship with him, but I realized actually you can just have the relationship with Christ. I didn't have a plan. There was no, this is what I'm going to do when I get out. So I prayed, and I invited Jesus back into my life. And he's so cool. Like, can you imagine? He started talking to me. Who dumps you for 18 years? Like, they just pop in and out and you're still friends with them. And then I was like, God, I need your help. I intend to pay every single person that I owe money. I want to be out of debt within a year. I need your help. I came out of Vipassana. The world felt very loud. Like, we talk too much. Like, seriously. And then, just in case I was going to default on my little plan of getting out of debt, as soon as I got home, there was a letter under my door. My landlord, who I owed money, was actually increasing the rent. So the rent I was even struggling to pay. Now I really couldn't afford it. So I called him and I said, can we meet? Went to his office, and then I went with my checkbook. I was like, so I have a plan. I think I can be out of debt in X number of months. Can I give you some post-dated checks? Can we come up with this plan? He said yes. And then he said, let's sign a contract. We did that. I walked out of his office. I'm standing on Biashara Street. I looked up at the sky. I was like, Jesus, hey! I felt so fully supported by God. I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I'm not alone. We're walking together. Then I called my mother. I said, Mom, I need to come back home. How are you and Dad with that? Like, I know your last born just got married, so you're enjoying your empty nest. And she said, no, you can come home. When do you want to come? I said, Saturday. She said, see you Saturday. Let me know if you need help moving. So within a very short, then I called my editor at The Star. I used to be a freelance writer. I called him. I said, I need to earn this amount of money because this business has gone bust, and I'm promising people I can pay them. So you need to throw work at me. And he said yes. Freelancers are never made these kind of promises. I had a plan. And a week later, I'd spoken to everybody I owed money. 10 months later, I had a son. I was Mama Udi, I still am. And I started, and then 2 years later, I had the first event, TEDx Lavington Women, where African women told their stories and shared their ideas with the world. And now I've founded Dadasphere, which, as you heard, is a platform for African women to share their stories. Yeah, as for the guy, me and Jesus are still friends. I realize I'm only open for a very particular type of relationship. I am taking applications. And the overriding lesson, looking back, is I always had every single thing I needed to make the next step, to make the decision, to fix my life and live it more authentically and more intentionally. I had all the wisdom. I knew everybody I needed to know. I had all the resources. All that was missing was a space of silence where I could let my inner voice and God get loud and guide me.